So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. I say that because this case is half solved. So police do have the killer and they are charged and, facing sentencing right now. But police believe there is more to this case than what they've uncovered so far. And they believe there's more suspects and they just need more evidence, more leads and things like that. So that's exactly why I wanted to do this video, because I have a platform to push this case out to. I'm not saying that me doing a video on this case is going to solve the case, but if we can make more people aware of it and then those people can inform people that they know and they can inform people that they know, it just gets it out there a little bit more. And it's actually one of the family's kind of goals is to get this case out there and get this case solved. Before we get into it, I just want to say Happy New Year. I know 2020 was not the best, so I hope 2021 is leaps and bounds better than 2020 was for you. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to thank our sponsor for making this video possible, Zuba, Zoo Battle Arena. Zuba is a brand new battle royale game free to download on both iOS and Android right now using the link down below in the description. And if you download right now, you'll get 50 free coins and 40 free gems. With over 10 million players already on the game and over a 4.6 star rating on the App Store, you're fighting against up to 45 players in every map. Pick from a selection of almost 20 warrior animals to compete as. Each has their own special attacks and abilities. You start the game with no weapons or anything, and you have to try and take out as many players as you can, gaining weapons along the way to become the last man, animal, standing. The best part of the whole game for me is when you get right down to that last opponent and it's like the final showdown between you and the other person. The adrenaline in that moment. I love that you can choose between different skins for your warrior, different emotes and things like that. It's a battle game that's also just super cute at the same time. So what are you waiting for? You can download Zuba for free using the link down below in the description, and if you do, you will get 50 free coins and 40 free gems. You're welcome. Thanks again to Zuba for sponsoring this video. Now let's get into it. But before we do, I just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This video is for educational purposes and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. So this case takes place in Stone Island in Atlanta, Georgia, in America. And as far as I could tell in my research, Stone Island is quite a crime-ridden place, literally one of the worst places in Atlanta, which Atlanta is notorious for high crime rates anyway. Honey Malone was an 18-year-old girl, originally born Vanessa Marie Malone, but when she was young, Honey decided that Vanessa didn't suit her. It wasn't her personality, it was too plain, in her words, and she wanted something more fun and more unique to suit her personality. And so she got everyone, her family, her friends, everyone to start calling her Honey. And the name Honey did really suit her sweet personality. She was known for being just so kind and so loving. Her mother said that ever since she was a child, she was just so gentle and so caring with everyone of all ages. She never wanted anyone to be sad. She would always be showing some kind of physical affection to anyone, hugging them, kissing them. And as she got older, Honey was very high energy. She was very outgoing, very energetic. She was always wanting to socialize. She was very positive all the time. She was known to have just a very happy disposition. She just seemed like such a sweet girl. She had an older sister named Cassandra, and I believe the two of them, Honey and Cassandra, were raised just by their mother, Flora. I'm not 100% sure, but from my research, I couldn't really see a father in the picture at all. Regardless, all three girls were very close, the two girls and their mother. Honey was a beautiful girl, and she always received a lot of attention for the way that she looked. She had gorgeous curly hair, twinkling green eyes, and she took great pride in her appearance as well. She always did her makeup really nice. She did like different eyeshadow looks. She was very into fashion, and she dressed very trendy for the time. So the time we're talking is like 2012-ish, when there was all snapbacks and, that kind of fashion. And she was, she was very on trend. But yeah, she just loved fashion in general. So much so that she actually got her first ever part-time job at a clothing store, at a dress store. Growing up, Honey had a lot of friends. Being this very positive and social, bubbly girl, this was kind of a magnet that attracted people to her, which was kind of a blessing, kind of a curse. She, had a lot of people in her life, a lot of friends that she could could hang out with. But a lot of these people weren't very nice people at points. But regardless, she was very social. She would go out nearly every night, like I said. And on October 23rd, 2012, that night was no different. She was going out to meet her friends. Honey's mother, Flora, picked her up from her job at this clothing store, and in the car on the way home she said that she was super tired and she was just going to go straight to bed. However, when the two of them got home, Honey went to her room to go to bed, but then came straight back out and said, "Oh mum, I'm going to go meet my friends instead," which Flora thought was kind of odd, her mother, because, you know, when Honey was tired, she was tired. She wasn't going to go out that same night. She wasn't going to change her mind. But regardless, she told her mother she wasn't going to be out long because she was tired, and she left. However, just a couple of minutes later, Honey came back in the apartment to tell her mum that she loved her, which her mum thought was kind of odd, but not odd, because, you know, Honey was the type to tell her that she loved her a lot. But she thought, why have you come back in the house to say that, you know? Honey was a very loving person, but she'd set off to her friend's house, turned around, walked back in the house to come and say she loved her mum, which her mum really liked, but why? Anyway, Honey set off for a second time after telling her mum that she loved her. And she set off walking to this friend's house, which was just down the road. She literally lived, like, pretty much on the same street as this friend. But not long after Honey left, Flora started to get this really bad feeling inside. She called it mother's intuition, that she just felt something was wrong. She heard what she believed in that moment to be fireworks in the neighbourhood, a lot of banging. Of course, she couldn't be too sure that they were fireworks, and whenever she heard something that kind of worried her a little bit, she would always call both of her daughters and just check if they were okay. So she called Honey, who she knew was just down the road. So she was in the area that these fireworks were going off. So she called Honey, but she didn't pick up. In fact, her phone went straight to voicemail, so her phone wasn't even on, which worried her mother. I mean, this wasn't so unusual for Honey because she would often turn her mobile phone off to kind of preserve the battery charge on it. So this wasn't entirely unusual for Honey, but at the same time, her mum knew that she hadn't been on her phone all day because she'd been at work. So her phone should have charged, but she just tried not to worry too much. So it wasn't entirely out of character for Honey to have her mobile phone switched off, but it was still worrying because her mother can't get in touch, but she just tried to calm down and not think about it too much. However, just a few minutes later, Flora heard sirens coming from the street outside, and she saw emergency vehicles speeding past the house in the direction of the place that Honey was going that night. And paired with what she just heard, all these banging sounds, these fireworks, and now emergency vehicles speeding past the house. She also can't get in touch with her daughter. Now Flora's really panicking. She tried Honey's phone again. She still can't get in contact with her, and so instead she decides to call her other daughter, Cassandra. But a few minutes into this phone call, Flora receives a knock at the front door. When she opens it, it's Honey's ex-boyfriend, Kevin, and his best friend, Chris. At this point, it was around 11:30 p.m, and when Flora opened the door, Kevin and Chris seemed really panicked, really on edge. And Kevin just said, "Something's happened to Honey. She's been shot." So Flora ran to the apartment complex where Honey had gone to visit friends, and she was calling her other daughter Cassandra on the phone to come down straight away. When the two of them arrived, the area was already a cordoned off crime scene. There were police there were ambulances there. They tried running up to all these police officers, asking them, but police couldn't actually tell them anything at this point in time. They couldn't tell them if someone was injured, critically injured, if someone had been killed, if a body had been found, nothing. They couldn't tell them the specifics of the crime scene that they were investigating. But all Flora wanted to know was if Honey was okay, if Honey was alive. She was giving police every single kind of identifying piece of information that she could about her daughter. Her hair colour, her eye colour, what she was wearing that day, her very specific tattoo that she had on her hand that said blessed. But despite this, police still couldn't tell her anything, and so Flora had no idea if Honey was injured, if she was dead, or if she was even involved, if she was even in that apartment at this time. Finally, at 2:15 a.m. the following morning, police confirmed that a body was found in that apartment, a female body, and it was Honey Malone. So now a murder investigation was put into motion, and that same morning, every single one of Honey's friends that was supposedly in that apartment when she died was questioned. Now, this group that Honey was with on the night of her murder, they were bad news. They were criminals. These crimes included firearms and drugs mostly. This apartment that she was in was actually a known drug den where they would sell drugs from the apartment, like literally dangerous people coming to the apartment to buy drugs, and Honey was there. She was killed there. This group that she was friends with, it was a bunch of teenage girls and older men in their 20s. And these older men were rappers by day and criminals by night. These rappers, the three main ones, were called Spoon, Yak, and Mercy. And Honey was very good friends with them. She would help them with their music videos, like you can see in this clip. The two men that owned the apartment were Yak and Mercy. I believe it was in Mercy's name. So it was his apartment and Yak lived there. And there was one other girl there in the apartment that night that Honey was murdered. Although I don't believe Yak was in the apartment, so Yak and Mercy lived there, but Yak wasn't there. It was Mercy and a girl. So Mercy and this girl that were in the apartment that night told police that they were the victims of an armed robbery that night. They said that between 3 and 6 men dressed in all black had come and kicked in the door. They were carrying firearms, carrying guns. The two of them claimed that they were beaten up and then tied up and then pushed into the bathroom and kept in there while these 3 to 6 men rummaged around the whole apartment and stole things. Then all of a sudden, the two of them claimed that they heard gunshots coming from the living room when they were stuck in the bathroom. And they believed that these were the gunshots that killed Honey Malone. Because Honey hadn't been in the apartment. The two friends had no idea that Honey was there. So they believed that they'd been put in the bathroom and then Honey came to the apartment and stumbled into this armed robbery that was going on. Honey had been shot twice, once in the back and once in the chest, so from 2 different angles, and one of these bullets had actually pierced all the way through her heart. So like I said, the initial theory was that Honey had walked in as this armed robbery was going on. She was shot once, and then as she kind of turned to leave, she was shot again. Of course, this can't be confirmed because the 2 people that were in the apartment, Mercy and this girl, claim that they were in the bathroom. They were tied up in the bathroom and they saw none of this happen. So we can't be sure what the circumstances surrounding Honey's murder were. But what we do know is that after Honey was shot in the living room, her body was then dragged through the house, through multiple rooms in the house. She was dragged through the hallway, through the dining room, all the way to the master bedroom, leaving a trail of blood all across the carpets, and then into the closet of the master bedroom where her body was then thrown onto a pile of dirty clothes and just left there. So now police had to figure out what exactly happened that night, and that would help them figure out who had done this to Honey. Now, there was evidence to support the theory of this armed robbery. Police found huge footprints outside and the same footprints inside the house. They were the same footprints that were found on the door that was kicked in, so, you know, possibly an intruder, but also easy to stage. There were a number of blood drops outside of the apartment that weren't Honey's blood, so someone else was injured in this incident. Police spoke with neighbours of this apartment, and one of the neighbours claims to have seen the perpetrators fleeing the scene, these men in black leaving the scene. He said that he saw them in the parking lot. He saw one of them kind of limping and the other one helping him into the van, their getaway vehicle. So this would make sense because maybe this man that the neighbour saw had been injured. That's why he was limping. That could have been his blood outside the house. So, more evidence. Police rang round all the local hospitals and then actually all the hospitals in the state of Georgia. Or maybe it was just Atlanta, I don't know. They rang round so many hospitals in that state to see if these people had travelled to go get treatment for this injury that this perpetrator had, but no hospitals had any admissions or anyone coming in with an injury to the leg that seemed to have been from a gunshot wound. Which could mean one of two things: that this person just didn't go to the hospital to get it treated. Maybe they had this very serious injury kind of treated by one of their friends as best as they could. Or this person doesn't exist and they weren't injured because they don't exist, you know. Now, Honey's family don't believe for 1 second that this was an accidental armed robbery, like Honey accidentally stumbled in on this armed robbery and disturbed it and got shot in the process. They don't believe this story at all. And their doubts were backed up when police found out that nothing was actually stolen from the apartment. Nothing. These were armed robbers going in to steal things, and they didn't steal anything. But to be fair, if kind of drugs and drug money and firearms or anything like that was stolen, they're not going to tell police that because that would get them into trouble. So maybe they just said that nothing was stolen because nothing that they could claim was stolen. You know what I mean? But regardless of whether that's true or not, the only thing that police could find to have been stolen was Honey's phone. Honey's mobile phone. Police actually traced the phone and found it lying on the ground around half a mile away from the crime scene. So they hadn't even stolen it, they'd discarded it. Why? What would be the point of stealing Honey's phone just to leave it on the ground half a mile away? You know, police are still gonna identify this body. If they're now wanting to hide who this person was that they killed, what is stealing her phone gonna do? Now, going on to Mercy and this girl's statements relating to this armed robbery, the two of them had very conflicting versions of events. One of them said that it was 3 men that came into the apartment dressed in all black, and the other one said that it was 5 or 6 men dressed in all black. Now, you can understand slight differences because these people, if this story was true, they're going to be very panicked. They're not going to be, you know, trying to take in all of this. They're going to be trying to block it out of their mind and try to protect themselves. But 3 and 5 or 6, those are very different amounts. That's nearly double. I just find it hard to believe that 2 people remember the exact same incident so differently, to the point where the number of perpetrators doubles in one person's story. But that's not the only difference. One of them says that the 2 of them were tied up with a belt, and the other person says that they were tied up with an electrical cable from a razor. 2 very different things. Once again, they would feel very different on your wrists. They said that they were tied up together, so they weren't tied up with different things. This armed robbery, even to professionals that have looked into this case, everyone seems to think that this is so suspicious. The way that it was carried out is just odd. Honey stumbles into this incident taking place and they kill her. Why do they then drag her body around the apartment all the way to a closet and then leave her there? Why? This is very unusual behaviour because in like 95% of cases that are like this one, armed robberies that have gone wrong where someone's died in the process, the assailants will try to flee the scene as quickly as possible because that's not what they intended to do. They didn't intend to kill someone and they want to get out of there so that they don't get caught for that. They're not going to stick around and try to half hide the body in a place where it's going to be found. These people, these men in black that just fired these guns, knows that the whole neighbourhood just heard them fire those guns. So why are they sticking around at the crime scene and trying to hide the body a little bit? Why are they not trying to get out of there as quick as they can? Honey's family genuinely believe that Honey was lured to that apartment for this. To be murdered by someone that she knew, by someone that she trusted. But what they don't know is why. Did she know something? Had she seen something that she shouldn't have? Were they trying to silence her? Had there been a disagreement of some sort? Because if you think back to the start of this case, there were a lot of odd things that happened one after another. So Honey, on her way home in the car to her mother, said that she was so tired that she was just going straight to bed. She wasn't going out that night. However, as soon as she got home, suddenly she changed her mind and she decided she was going out, which was unusual. Maybe the reason she changed her mind was because she got a text from someone telling her to come and meet them or to come to that apartment, and that is why she left. Either way, her family just don't believe this robbery gone wrong story, because why didn't the assailants kill the other two? Why didn't they kill Mercy and this girl? If they witnessed it and Honey witnessed it, why didn't they kill all three of them? If they were going to kill one person, why not kill all three that just watched you do this? And Honey's family say that she would never walk up to a door that had been kicked in and just, go in and investigate. She was smarter than that. Her family know her better than anyone. They know that she would get the hell away from that, because that's a terrifying thing to walk up to, is your friend's apartment kicked in. She wasn't the type to just hang around and get into danger. She would have fled if she'd known that something like this was going on. And that's why her family think she was lured there, everything was fine, she was in the apartment, and then things switched. Her sister Cassandra has also said that she finds it odd that Mercy didn't try to fight back, because Mercy is known for being violent, a violent criminal. He had firearms, he's used violence before, so why is this incident any different? Why didn't he try to fight back? This is just something that Cassandra has said. That's not me blaming victims in any way. Like, if this armed robbery was a genuine incident that happened, it's understandable why they wouldn't fight back. But this is just something that Cassandra has said to kind of further her point that she doesn't believe that this was an armed robbery that went wrong. Mercy said that the two of them waited in that bathroom tied up for a couple of minutes until they were sure that the men had gone, and that was when they tried to untie themselves. And Cassandra just finds it hard to believe that this is the first and only time that this man has been too scared to fight back. So Mercy and this girl were key people of interest in this case this whole time for obvious reasons, but there was absolutely no evidence, physical evidence, that said that they had a part in Honey's murder, and so they couldn't be arrested. And plus there were things like the blood sample outside of the apartment which pointed towards this being another person that wasn't Mercy or this girl. Police looked into every single lead, every single call that came in, everything they possibly could. However, after a couple of years, this case went cold. Police had no more suspects, and with very little evidence, they couldn't charge anyone at all. Although they did still have a hunch that Mercy knew more than he was letting on. He was the main guy in charge of this drug den at this apartment. He was the one in charge of the money, in charge of the contacts, in charge of, he was the one in charge, and Yak was his right-hand man. So police believed that if anyone knew anything, it would be Mercy. Even if this armed robbery story was correct, he probably knew who it was that had done this and then murdered Honey, but he wasn't talking. He knew who was out to get him. He knew who his enemies were. He knew who knew where he lived and worked. Does that make sense? Basically, he could have given police a lot of names, but he wasn't. A lot of potential names, even. Anyway, as a result of this murder investigation of Honey Malone, and of course police spending a lot of time with Yak and Mercy, they managed to charge them with crimes unrelated to this. Mercy was charged with theft, possession of firearms, and a bunch of other things that he pled guilty to and served a year in prison for. And Yak pled guilty to some kind of drugs charge and tampering with evidence, and so he served less than a year in prison. 7 long years went by and there were no developments in this case. That's 7 years that Honey's family had absolutely no answers as to why this happened to their loved one or who did this to Honey. All that time, one of the lead investigators on the case even kept a picture of Honey on his desk so that he could see her face every single day and be reminded that this girl needs justice. And he said that that really motivated him to keep going through the case files and keep fighting for this girl. And then, unexpectedly, in 2019, so just last year, police made an unrelated firearms arrest in that area. And when the gun was seized and tested, it was found to be the exact gun that had killed Honey Malone 7 years prior. And the owner of this gun was Mercy. His real name is Donald Ash. He was arrested in his mother's home in April of 2020, so just earlier this year. He was charged with second-degree murder and making false statements. So police went back and looked at Honey's case and all of the evidence that they found, and they were trying to see where the links were with Mercy. And that was when they tested the blood sample from outside the apartment, and they found that it was a match to Mercy. Now, I have no idea why they didn't do this before. At the time of the case, they just ran this blood sample against the DNA database, and they found no matches on the DNA database of people that had been arrested for violent crimes. And Mercy obviously hadn't been arrested for a violent crime at this time. And so his name didn't come up. But I have no idea why police didn't just get a blood sample from Mercy when they were suspicious of him. He was a person of interest. Why are you not getting a blood sample and testing it against the one outside? I don't know. This could have been solved so long ago. I'm sure there's more to it. I don't ever like to look back at cases and be like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Because hindsight is 20/20. Mercy has since said, since his arrest, that he was a victim too that night, and he's still sticking to this armed robbery story. However, despite saying that he is a victim too, that Honey wasn't the only victim and that he was a victim, he has actually refused to speak with Honey's family. This is a man that claimed to be close friends with this family's daughter. They lose their daughter, they're grieving, all they want to do is speak to her friend that was with her on the night that she died, and he won't speak to them. You would think that he would have some kind of sympathy for Honey's family, because her life, according to him, was brutally taken in front of him that night in the apartment. You would think that he would, want to speak with them and kind of help them get closure in any possible way if they want to speak to him, but he never would speak to the family. Police believe that Mercy didn't act alone, and they are still trying to find as many as 2 different accomplices from that night. These 2 potential accomplices, I don't know their names, and they haven't been arrested or charged yet, but this just shows that the armed robbery story was a lie. And I don't want to speculate too much because this case is still unfolding. However, there was a girl in that apartment that night that also lied about this armed robbery, so she could potentially be one of the accomplices. Because for what other reason would she be there? But there's still so many questions surrounding this case, surrounding a motive. Why was Honey murdered that night? Did they intend to murder her? Did they lure her there specifically to murder her? What was the reason? Was it an accident? Did she know too much? Were they trying to get rid of her? Was there a disagreement? Did she deny someone's advances that night? One of the theories that I've seen online is that maybe her phone had something to do with it. Maybe she had a picture on there or a video or something that she shouldn't have had, some form of evidence on that phone, and maybe that was why the phone was stolen and left half a mile away on the ground. Maybe they'd brought her to the apartment that night to delete something from her phone. Maybe they killed her because she knew too much, she knew about this picture or this video, and then they disposed of her phone. Police still somehow maintain their belief of the armed robbery story, that Honey stumbled in on an armed robbery and she was just caught in the crossfire. That doesn't explain why the owner of the apartment shot her with his gun that he owned. It just makes no sense. To me, there's got to be something more to this case. Honey's family have since said that they want this case to be out there in the public. They want people to keep talking about this because they want answers. There's still way more to this case that needs uncovering. Just a little bit of add-on information about the aftermath of the murder. True Crime Daily actually did a video on this specific case, and they spoke with a young couple that actually purchased the apartment in which Honey was murdered. They were completely unaware of the apartment's history when they purchased it, and as they were moving all their furniture in, they noticed this long red stain across the carpet leading to the closet. So they called the letting agent or the landlord, and they just said, what's the deal with all this staining? Like, what is it? And they said, oh, don't worry, it's just some fruit juice that the previous person that lived there hadn't cleaned up. But the couple weren't satisfied with this explanation. I mean, I don't think many people would be. This was a very big and continuous stain for it to just be fruit juice. It was as if something had been dragged across the carpet. You don't just pour fruit juice in a long trail all the way across your house. The woman was particularly suspicious that this could be blood. After all, this was quite a high crime rate area. No one ever wants to believe that there is blood in their carpet, but, this was an oddly shaped and coloured stain. And so this woman went out and got peroxide, which, if you don't know, when you put peroxide on blood, it starts to fizzle and foam. And when she got home, she put this peroxide on a section of the carpet where this stain was, and it started to foam up. which confirmed to her that her and her partner had just purchased an apartment that was a crime scene. So the couple moved out as quickly as they possibly could, and they complained to the letting agent or the landlord for not informing them about this, for not making them aware of the history of their apartment. But it turns out that the letting agent or the landlord didn't actually have to do that. Legally, in Georgia, landlords don't actually have to inform you that a murder has taken place in the property that you're purchasing or renting unless you ask about a specific murder. So unless you know like a name or, you know, something very specific about that crime, they're not going to tell you if the house you're purchasing is a murder house. I thought it was quite shocking and interesting to add on the end there. But that is all I have for this case. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to Zoo Battle Arena for sponsoring this video. Remember, you can download the game using the link down below in the description. It's free on iOS and Android, and if you download right now, you'll get 50 free coins and 40 free gems. Huge thank you to all of my channel members for helping me decide the cases that I cover, especially my tier 2 members whose names are all on screen right now. If you want to become a channel member, you can just click the join button on a desktop, or there'll be a link in the description of this video. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a big thumbs up. You can subscribe using the link right here. If you want to subscribe to my brand new second channel, you can click the link right here. Or if you want to watch another video, you can watch the playlist right here. Bye!